So I was reading over her form. Leash reactivity starting to happen?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead and fill me in.
Yeah, so obviously she's a big girl. She recently, and we're in a big building that is very dog friendly. There's a lot of dogs, and
Okay.
we used to pride ourselves on how not reactive on the leash and how good she is.
Okay.
Like not, I don't know, responding when a dog like lunges or barks at her.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's kind of starting to happen. Like as soon as we get into the hallway, she sniffs under all the doors and
Yeah.
is like kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we get out onto the sidewalk, it's like the first couple dogs that we see, she's like going at, and they're usually smaller doodles. I feel like it's mostly doodles, yeah.
Readest?
Yeah. Yeah. So that, and then a little bit with like, when people say like, can we give her a treat? Or something, like, sure, as long as there's no dogs around. But then, if there is a dog around, she'll kind of go like that at them.
Okay.
And she can escalate quick.
Okay. Have you seen her go to a 10?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
just like in the lobby or the passing
At
or
the park.
at the park?
Yeah, and she doesn't like instigate it, but if a dog's going at her, I mean, she'll go back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is she off leash at the park here or
Yeah,
at
in the
dog
like
park?
in the dog park.
Kennel
yeah.
run? I
Yeah.
gotcha. Okay.
We do off leash we live right across from Skinner, so we'll do off leash there as long as we have this.
Oh yeah.
And her recalls
Pretty good.
100% with this.
Mhm.
And yeah, but like out at the park and everything, she's super friendly off leash. She
Mhm.
is fine unless the dog's really bothering her.
Mhm.
Then she'll kind of growl and give him something, but that's, I mean, I take that as normal, like checking,
Mhm.
kind of.
To a degree, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, kind of other than that, we just kind of want to nip this leash lunging.
How old is she again?
She'll be 2 in June.
Okay. And you've had her since she
Get
was
to
a pup?
that, 8 months.
8 months.
We
So
rescued
you got
her.
Okay. So you've had her for like a year and 4 months?
Mhm.
Okay.
Just about.
And then this, and you said this leash reactivity is like progressive, like it wasn't there
Yeah.
immediately.
No.
Okay. Did you notice after you got her, when she was 8 months, after you got her, how long into that would you say you started to see the signs of reactivity?
Oh, 2 months ago,
Yeah, it's like 10 months out.
10 months into having her, or like a year into having her.
So was she a year or you had her for a year?
We had it for a year.
We had her.
Okay,
for
so
a year.
at a year and 8 months
Yes,
is when she
yeah,
started to split,
yep.
right? I gotcha. Okay. Initially, when you walked her, was she on a harness or anything like that?
No.
No? Did you jump straight into the remote training right away?
We've been doing the remote training for about a year now.
Okay.
I'd say.
Yeah, we had a trainer we originally
It
worked
love
with
this.
for like a month and a half, 2
Okay.
months.
One-on-one?
Yeah.
Okay. And then recall obviously was covered.
Yeah.
And what else?
We didn't have any major issues besides, she just helped us with potty
Walking.
training, walking, so making sure
Just
she's,
heel.
her heel is not perfect either, but she
Okay.
doesn't pull
Okay.
unless she's lunging.
Sure.
But honestly, usually we're having to like drag her. She's slow.
She's a slow walker.
Lumbers. She's,
Yeah, especially with the summer coming.
yeah,
Yeah, I could see it. I mean, larger dogs, especially with heavier, thicker coats,
yeah,
tend to overheat pretty quickly.
yes, yeah. She walks slow, definitely in the summer too. Last summer was like short walks. She doesn't need.
Which is fine, yeah.
She doesn't
her
like to
indoors
go on
most
long
days.
walks.
Okay.
Our previous trainer kind of compared her to like a Great Pyrenees in terms of
Mhm.
Demeanor and everything.
ability to respond to like a command. Like
Oh, okay.
it just takes a second.
Yeah, well, Grand Pyrenees in the dog training world are not the brightest.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think she's instinctual,
Uh-huh.
but not super eager to like appease us.
So if she's already, she's 2 years, approaching 2 years,
Mhm.
correct? So she's not going to get much bigger.
Yeah,
How much does she weigh now?
we're gonna wear this morning.
We're like, I would think
Probably
like,
83.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's about what I would
Yeah, I'd
guess.
say, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe a little more than that.
And is your primary concern really just the reactivity? Like, what's your overall goal here?
Stop being reactive on walks.
Okay.
It's not fair to anybody walking by. Like every time she does it, like a pole, we stop, and now we're starting to like stop before the dog even passes, and I'm looking at her and saying, "Lady, no, lady, no," and like making her look at me. And then when she does, we praise her, give her a treat.
Okay. Is this stuff
But
that
it's
you
so random
that you've applied on your own, or is this from the trainer from before?
on our own.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like we haven't stuck with a whole lot.
We have.
Well, like,
Well, with the recall and everything too.
yeah, recall using this. Yeah.
Okay.
And then also barking when we leave.
Separation barking, or?
Yeah, but she also like barks when we're there too, and we're able to like cut that out. We just like calm her down or like distract her or something.
Okay.
But again, there's a lot of dogs on our floor. We're in a high traffic like walking area right by the stairwell, so she hears that, and when we're not there, she's definitely like on guard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you gotten complaints?
It wasn't a complaint. Our neighbor, we have one neighbor and then one below us, and she doesn't care. I've apologized. She's like, I really can't hear it. And then our next door neighbors have 2 dogs, and they were like, we can't hear it either, but they listed their place and they had showings.
Oh.
We weren't there, and someone was showing.
Sure.
And so then they told us like, hey, we're gonna let you know when we have showings, if you could just like
Yeah.
keep it down. I'm like, oh yeah, so sorry.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. How'd you hear about us?
Lecker Max.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he recommended you.
Okay. Yeah.
Lecker and Lady are buddies.
Okay. All good information. Anything else?
What else? She did, so we boarded her at WAG, and we were able to see her on the camera, and I asked them to move because, again, it was a sheer door, or like a see-through door, and it was also right by the door, so everybody was walking by. She was like aggressively barking and clawing like through the barrier. It's a barrier thing. I mean, I know dogs get like that through fences and stuff, and then they get in the park and like they're fine, whatever. So I just asked them to move, and that was a little bit better. And then I could just tell she was like so stressed all weekend whenever I would check in on the camera. And then we're in the Uber going to pick her up, and I get a call. And they're like, hi, lady's okay, but she did have an altercation with the dog. It's like, oh my gosh, we'll be there soon. And I guess they said it was unprovoked. I find it so, and again, we're biased because we see her play rough all the time with dogs, and like she shows a lot of tolerance and restraint when a dog is bothering her until it's like, and I don't know, deserved. Like if the dog's really going at her, she'll like let him know, stop it. They said it was unprovoked. There was a puncture. Being in that high stress, sure, maybe. But yeah, obviously I do want to let you know that like she did, I guess.
I can't help you guys.
Yeah.
Just joking. No, it's fine. I'll explain all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, it's pretty standard. Anything else? Nope. Okay.
It's pretty comprehensive.
So we'll start with WAG. So is this like a hotel or something? Dog?
Yeah, WAG.
Dog daycare. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know there's the app WAG, so I was just trying to make sure
that's-
that.
You used to
Yeah.
be in the
Dog Pooch Hotel.
Oh, okay. So is it like a new company now?
Yeah.
I
New
see.
owner.
I gotcha. So
That was our first time ever boarding her.
sure. So she's dropped off there, and I'm sorry, you were on your way to pick her up, and this had just happened, or like
Yes.
okay,
Like-
and so she had already been there for a time.
Yeah, she had already been in the
For like
play
2
groups and
nights.
everything and was
Yeah.
fine.
Okay.
And then snapped on a doodle.
Sure. So when I hear the word unprovoked, I usually just roll my eyes and I go, "You don't know what you're doing." Okay, because dogs don't do things for no reason. Okay, humans do. Humans can, right? Like a human can just like walk past and just decide to do that for no fucking reason,
Yeah.
right? Dogs don't do that. Dogs are very honest creatures in that way. So chances are they probably had an unregulated play group, which most daycares, that's what they do, is unregulated. Or they had, usually it's a revolving door with employees. So you get a new employee who also doesn't know what they're doing, and then something happens, and then the easiest answer is just unprovoked, okay? If you're telling me she's very tolerant, and because the other thing I think about is like, if it was stress related to the environment, like it would have been more sooner.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
This
she's
was day
consistently in.
3.
She's
Yeah,
Yeah.
we went on
socialized her a lot.
Sunday. We dropped her off on Friday.
Yeah. So day 3, unless, the way I would say it was like, yes, she was either overwhelmed because of a dog was pestering her too much and then her tolerance went down. Maybe they had her in a play group that was just too much energy and she just was not fitting in. Because for me, if it was environmental, because those places tend to be very loud
Yeah.
with barking and stuff, it's like constant chaos, which already
Yeah.
puts the dog under stress. It's like almost instantaneously you're gonna see something happen. Okay. Whenever I hear an altercation happens at a dog daycare, I just take it with a grain of salt. I go,
Yeah.
it's good to know.
Yeah.
But I never hold it against the dog because almost always they don't know what they're doing.
Thank you.
Okay. So, everything you provide was good information. So, with the reactivity stuff, it can be a couple of things. So dogs have 3 pivotal psychological shifts in their life: 6 months, a year, and 2 years. So if you had her at 2 months, for example, and you're like, yeah, we had her 2 months, she was great with all dogs, and then at 6 months, we started to notice like this kind of defensiveness, selectiveness and stuff like that. It's because of the personality shift.
Yeah.
Okay, so like I'm not the same person I was when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I'm not even the same person I was like a year ago. Like we're constantly changing and like adapting and all that stuff, right? Same thing for dogs. But 6 months, a year, and 2 years are typically where we see something about to happen, or not something about to happen, something happening, right? I've had clients that they're like, at a year, the dogs are becoming territorial over the home, right? Because they're becoming an adult now, so now they're starting to display like these territorial behaviors. So 6 months I like to describe as terrible twos brain, if you're familiar with children, teenager body. A year is teenager brain, adult body. 2 years is adult dog. So that's essentially, you have what you have.
Yeah.
Okay. So like I did a Belgian Malinois puppy consultation this morning. They didn't need to do it, but I had my previous trainer trained them, and then I was like, I'll do this to meet you formally or whatever. But I was like giving them feedback on Malinois. I'm like, because they're like, oh, he's pretty calm for a Mally. I'm like, for
Just
now.
wait.
This puppy's 2.5 months. I'm like, wait till he's 6 months, a year, same thing, 2 years. And then she's like, you know what? Now that I noticed, like, he's like very attentive to almost everything. Like, I'm like, yeah, other puppies are like this. Like they'll be, at it, and then they're like this. When I had him for the consult, like I had to take him because he was all over the place. You could just see the alertness, and I was like, just be mindful, because if he is more mal than not mal, you're in for like lifelong training or whatever,
Yeah, those dogs are intense.
Yes, they're a thing. So, yeah, so when it comes to that stuff, I'm not really too worried about it. We have a dog actually here that they left their previous dog daycare. So they started training with me. They're on week 4 or 5. They're on their honeymoon. But the dog had been going there for a while, and then one day bit a dog's tail. And then because of that incident, they weren't allowing her to socialize anymore. And she's a Rottie.
That's what they said to us too.
Yeah, she's a Rottie, so like also her power breed or whatever. And we have her now. And I remember, because I did her socialization, and she's just she's a gladiator type dog in terms of play. So I was like, this is a dog that if it goes unchecked, unregulated, it's going to escalate.
Yeah.
So I describe it to people, it's kind of like in high school we had what was called slaps. You ever hear that game?
I think so.
Yeah, where guys would slap each other, and you would just gradually increase the intensity, and somebody slaps a little too hard, a little too soon or whatever, right? And all of a sudden you got to fight. So it starts off friendly, as stupid as it is, but eventually somebody does something a little bit wrong, and all of a sudden you got a confrontation.
They need to.
It's like with dogs.
Yeah.
It starts off rough because they're mouthy, they bite each other, they pull on their jowls and stuff, and somebody pulls on the jowl a little too hard, it gets a little bit too intense, and all of a sudden we have a dog fight, right? So all that stuff, again, nothing that I've not heard of before, so I'm not too worried about that. When it comes to like the remote collar and everything, so you've only conditioned to recall.
Yes.
Okay.
So we are kind of using it when she's lunging. And
Yeah.
But I don't, every time I do it, I'm like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yes and no.
Okay, because I like worry, or if we're in a fight or something, and I do the red button, like is she, and well, we've done that maybe once. Like, I know you're not supposed to do it when they growl or something, because then they'll skip the growl and go right to attack. Like, that's one theory, maybe.
Yeah,
I want to feel more confident in what I'm doing when she's doing these behaviors.
Yeah.
We both do. So that
So what's
it
your
doesn't escalate.
what's your understanding of the e-collar? Like, how do you view it?
I think it's a good tool. Yeah, I think it's a good tool for dogs that need it, and especially like she doesn't care again to eat sick unless she's not highly tree motivated. Actually, she's kind of starting to be, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Do you have any?
I think it's more of, a lot of people, I think that they kind of get a bad rap for being just ways to punish dogs, but I kind of see it more of like a correction
Yeah.
instead of a
Yeah.
punishment.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it's not.
And that's
Yeah.
why we didn't go out and just buy one haphazardly.
Right.
We wanted to go about it the right way and
Sure.
hire a trainer and everything and try to make sure we understood the right reasons and when to use it. And
Yep.
so we try to go about it the right way, but we kind of see more of it as a tool for correction as opposed to the dog did something wrong, so now the dog gets
Yeah.
punished.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting because e-collar and prong collars, like we call it versive dog training,
Yeah.
is we have what's called punishment-based training, and then it's double like pressure-based training.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know what the difference between the two is?
I don't know what pressure-based training would be.
No.
No. Punishment-based training is when everything is shaped using food. The sits, the place, the comes, everything's food. And then at 2 weeks or whatever, the trainer goes, okay, you know these commands. So now I'm going to add in the e-collar or the prong collar. So then it's sit. The dog's in a distracting environment. They don't do it. Boom. Right? Now the dog is punished for not performing the task. Okay, so that's punishment-based training. Is you have a very large gap because you have positive only, treats, praise, blah, 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 to I'll punish you. So there's no bridge. Pressure-based training is we shape everything using the e-collar. Okay? So have you ever pulled up and pushed down to make a lady sit?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really hard.
Okay? That's pressure.
Yeah.
You're pulling up on the leash or the collar, you're pressing down the hindquarters, and you're using that physical pressure to get her to sit. And the moment she sits, you'd alleviate the pressure, right? We do the same thing, but with remote collar.
Yeah.
We start really low, we're shaping the behavior as we're tapping. The moment the dog sits, everything stops.
Yeah.
And then if they get up, I repeat the process. So then the dog starts to go, hey, every time I feel this, if I do this, it turns off. So now the dog is understanding how the collar turns on and how the collar turns off. And you'd be surprised how uncommon that method of training is, but that's the primary method that helps the dog learn to interpret the collar. Okay, so when we have punishment-based training, the client I had just before you that went over on her time did a 2 to 3 week boarding train at a franchise training place in Ohio. And she said when she picked up her dog and they tried to use the e-collar, he would always yelp. Okay, no matter what. No matter if they're low, no matter if they're high, and all that stuff. And I go, your dog was not conditioned correctly.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, how do you know? Like, I paid X amount of money and stuff. I'm like, because the fact that your dog was yipping and yelping for a year after the boarding train tells me the dog does not know why it's happening. It's usually frustration. The dog knows it will happen, but does not know why it will happen. And that creates frustration. The yelping is the frustration response. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So she signed up. Today we had our third class. We've not heard a yelp because he's being conditioned correctly. The first class was, I need to recondition your dog. So we did heel training. Heel training is the best tool that we have for conditioning a dog on e-collar because her dog is least reactive. So like during the consult with my wife, Elizabeth, came down, like he was super reactive, blowing up, like really hard to calm him down. Then we had the first class. We were about 30 minutes in. My wife came down to do something and he looked at her and he growled, but he didn't freak out like the first time. The first time it was like almost impossible to calm him back down again. And I go, now we already have progress because the dog, even though he growled, wasn't at the 10, he went to a 2 to 3, right? And we're just building upon that now with tweaking our numbers and everything like that. So like today, he saw her again, he didn't growl, but he was interested, right? So we were already seeing that de-escalation. So I told her, I'm like, you had plenty of exposure with the collar because you were trying to apply it and use it for that year after. It just wasn't taught correctly, and then you weren't taught correctly, so the dog never knew how to control it. Now that we condition him correctly, literally on the first class, the dog goes, oh, this thing that I felt for a year, I now know how it works. and now the dog is less frustrated, no longer vocalizes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we always want to make sure that we're conditioning correctly. In my opinion, any dog that's going to be remote collar trained has to learn heel.
Yeah.
That's almost always going to be the first thing that we cover. Okay, recall comes next.
Yeah.
So the most common things that we get are leash reactivity and leash pulling. So heel is always the first thing that we teach, 99% of the time. Every now and then I get a dog who's super reactive or super aggressive that I need to curb that behavior first so that the owner can even be outside before we can do the heel training. But it's like super rare that that happens, okay? Questions so far?
I don't think so.
Is that a mini educator?
Yeah.
Okay, that's meant for a 35-pound dog and under. Yes, I know this is super common. The lady, the one that I had before you, showed up on that same collar.
Okay.
Okay, and her dog is like a 60-ish pound Aussie with thick fur. So I bring this up for a number of reasons. So the reason why that's the most common training tool, it's a good collar.
Yeah.
Okay, I stopped using that brand 15 years ago.
Okay.
When I first started my career as a dog trainer, there's two major brands. There's eCollar Technologies, at the time they were known as Einstein, and there's Doctra. We use Doctra. Doctra at the time required me to purchase $10,000 of inventory up front in order to be considered a reseller. I was just starting my business. I didn't have $10,000 to my name, so I said, nope, can't do that. eCollar Technologies, I could call them up, order one collar, they would overnight it, and the profit margin is bigger, right? Plus, it's more affordable for the average person, so it's very attractive to sell, and I know I can get it immediately. Does that make sense? So it's very common for that reason. Plus, their customer support is probably one of the best that there is. I won't deny them that. But I had like a handful of aggression cases when I first started, and they were all getting worse. And because my mentor trained with Doctra. So they were all getting worse, and I was like, man, the only thing I can think of is that I'm using this brand. So I literally, out of my own pocket, bought 5 Doctra collars appropriate to each of those dogs. I told the owners, I'm going to take your collar, I'm going to give you this, and then they all made progress. Okay. My theory is the sensation of the pressure is different. eCollar Technologies tends to be sharper. Doctra is duller. Okay, if you compare them side to side, because there's different models. You have, so for Doctra we have 5. 15 pound and under, 35 pound and under, 70 pound and under, 70 pound, 70 pound and over. And there's some in-between ones, but those are like the main ones, okay? If you feel a small collar compared to the big collar, you're like, wow, 50 on here is 20 on here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the output is different. So Mini Educator, Mini, is meant for a 35-pound dog and under, okay? Then you have the regular e-collar, and then you have the Boss, if it's still called that. The Boss is meant for like the 70-pound dogs and over. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So the reason why I bring that up is with the reactivity stuff. I've had dogs that become reactive or defensive or aggressive, and you're maxed out on the collar, they don't care about it.
Yeah. They'll
Override the collar. Okay. Now you may say like, oh, with the recall stuff, it's working. Like, right, but we're in a low intensity situation.
Yeah.
When the adrenaline is pumping, we got that. We have the variable of your dog's fur. She's got a pretty thick coat.
Yeah,
we have the
prongs on.
yeah. We have the size of the dog itself. Right. All these things are things that I factor in whenever I recommend a client a remote collar. Okay. I had a client. Dog's name was Georgia. It's on my YouTube. The worst reactivity case I had of 23. Okay, 30-pound dog with the reactivity of like a 100-pound pit bull. Okay, this dog was fucking intense. 300 feet away, super reactive. Okay, so I saw that already at the consultation, and I told the owner, "You want the black edition?" And I told her it's meant for a Rottie, and I was like, "But trust me, you're gonna want it." And she was like, "Okay." She believed me. She took me for my word. She bought the correct collar. It took me until class 4 or 5 before we finally found the solution for the reactivity, because we always start low and then we work our way up. Okay, every dog is different. So we hit class 4 or 5, and I told her, okay, we've already tried all the standard stuff, nothing is working, you're not making really any progress, so what we're going to do is we're going to correct the reactivity at max power, okay, which is the harshest correction you can give. Logically, it doesn't make sense for the human, because the human goes, this is a 30-pound dog with the e-collar meant for a Rottweiler being corrected at max power. And I'm like, yeah, but we already tried everything else. So once we hit that point, I said, rinse and repeat for 2 weeks. And don't have your next class until we make progress. Okay? It worked. So we ended up having our next class. We're at the park. We were covering, I believe it was Place Command that day. And we had dogs off leash running past us, no reactivity. Dog didn't even care. I think we had one reactive moment. It was because an off leash dog ran into our personal space, but she corrected instantaneously. Whereas if you watch her video, it's like a 45-minute video because I explained the process. You see her just like going at it for minutes, just nonstop. Okay, and that was a 30-pound dog. But I saw the intensity during the consultation, so I already knew you're probably going to need that high-powered collar, because if she would have got the appropriate powered collar, we would have never curbed the behavior. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this is something I point out to people because we had a seminar 2 weekends ago, and so many people were on that collar, and so many people were struggling. It wasn't my seminar, so I didn't say anything, but I was like, almost everybody needs to be on a higher powered collar.
Yeah.
Because none of the dogs were really, they would stop momentarily, but then they would trigger again. And I always tell people, we want to stop and then deter the behavior. I'm not happy with, I can stop my dog. That's great. And we get those, like, we get some pretty severe stuff. But that's like one dog a year out of 100 or whatever, right? But if every dog was like, I have to always correct them to stop them, then that tells me the dog's not learning. I'm just able to stop it. But I want the dog to learn in the future, don't do it again. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's where the output is very important because let's say you max this thing out and you're like, yeah, just so we can stop her, but she's still going at it. Now we're really just wasting time in classes there.
Right.
Okay. Questions on any of that stuff? So when it comes to reactivity, it's pretty straightforward. The first thing we always teach is heal. That primes everything for the reactivity stuff. Okay. The reason why we teach heal is it fixes about 70 to 80% of problems. So a lot of times reactivity just goes away in the first and second class. Okay. So it's reactivity, but it's not what I would cover, what I would call like true reactivity. Like Georgia was true reactivity because that took me work to figure out, right? A majority of the dogs, once we cover heal, that first class, and we condition them correctly, like the owner will come back and they're like, oh, just like 80% of the reactivity is done. And I'll say, like, when did the dog blow up? And they're like, oh, a dog barked at them. Or like I turned the corner and there was a dog. Or the elevator's door opens and there was a dog.
Yeah.
I go, that makes sense because it's sudden, right? It's just dog. Or the other dog is reactive, so now the dog feels threatened, so they react back.
Yeah.
Right? So all that stuff makes sense. I go, great. And they're like, but otherwise I can walk past dogs now and all that stuff. I go, cool. We've already got rid of a chunk of that reactivity. Now it's what we would call the residual, like what's left over. Okay? So the first class is heal part 1. Go off, rinse and repeat, come back, feedback. Feedback helps me tweak class 2. We work on heal part 2, make some adjustments, go off, rinse and repeat. You come back class 3, hey, reactivity's looking good. We just had these little moments. And if it's stuff that I expect, like surprise dogs, whatever, I'll give you a couple of tips and then say you're gonna have to work on this over time because we can't plan for it. That's what makes it harder, right? Is you can't plan for, I'm gonna turn the corner and there'll be a dog there. It's just gonna happen. But like with my client earlier, because that's what was happening to her, I was like, you want to assume that there's going to be a dog around the corner.
Right.
So then I gave her feedback and I said, you're going to do this instead. And then when you cross the corner, you're not going to just turn the corner, because a lot of people just do that, where they just turn around and they don't see. And I was like, you're going to fan out. You're going to give yourself space. You're going to utilize your environment to your benefit. So in case there is a dog there, we have a gap. So we're not worried about an altercation. But now you have enough space and time to correct your dog. And then in time, your dog will not be reactive when it suddenly sees a dog. Does that make sense? So it's really just knowing how to maneuver in life, and then eventually all that stuff tends to just go away. Okay? Now, if you come back class 3 and you're like, Jesse, she is a piece of work, then I go, we set up controlled context. And we have a dog bring out different personality types to see if we can cause the reactivity to happen. So we force it. Okay? But we've already layered the foundation for those first 2 classes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we have what we call direct and indirect approach. Indirect approach is I teach heal. What does it fix? Right? Heal and reactivity are like related but not related because they're leash behaviors. But it's the discipline behind heal that fixes the reactivity. And then if the owner goes, I'm still struggling, they go, indirect didn't work. Now we're going to do direct, which is the dog acts out, we correct them for the choice.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Questions?
No. Yeah. It's just so, I guess unpredictable. I guess we pretty much expect now the first, especially if it's a small dog, the first dog that we see on a walk, I can assume that she's gonna do it. So I'm like
ready.
preemptively trying to like make sure she doesn't.
So,
But then other times it's like we're walking into the park and a dog is coming out. Like this morning it was a black doodle. I was like, and she just, I feel like she's played with this dog in the park too before.
sure,
But
good barrier
she like,
aggression.
sees
Yeah.
it and she's like,
So, with barrier aggression, there was a viral video, I think it was probably TikTok or something, and it was like, I think 2 Malinois or something, or Malinois looking dogs, and it's an electric fence. And when it's open, they're fine.
yeah.
And when it closes, they fight.
Yeah.
And then it opens, they're fine. And it closes, they fight. It happens for like
She's
3
that
minutes.
With my parents, with my family's dogs too.
Yeah.
Like, sliding glass door, same thing.
Yeah, so dogs are reactive.
Yeah.
Okay, they're not proactive. So lady doesn't go out going, can't wait to find me a small dog to bark at, right? You're literally out in the world and small dog, trigger. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's action, reaction. So like seeing the small dog, reaction. Or like the glass door up, reaction.
Yeah.
Glass door dog, gone, nothing, right? It sounds stupid, but dogs are what I call either on or off. So like if I have a dog that's a resource guarder, they're eating their food. I know if I don't bother with them, nothing's gonna happen. But the moment I do this, they start growling, right? It just turns on. And the moment I do this, they stop growling,
Yeah.
right? So once you start to understand and see this, it makes things easier because you're able to predict, avoid, or work through things.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I know what to do if a dog is full-blown reactive. I can regain control. I can correct the dog, blah, 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 right? I also know how to avoid those things, right? So like if someone tells me my dog is a resource guarder, I already know what not to do while I'm in the training process
Right.
until I'm ready to work on that behavior.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Whereas usually people tend to assume things, like you don't know how many times I've had people tell me they got bit because they put their fist in their dog's bowl. Right? And I'm like, why would you do that? They're like, well, because I should be able to do whatever I want with my dog. And I'm like, it doesn't really work that way. Right? I was like, but you just literally asked to be bit. I'm like, I wouldn't want somebody's hand in my food while I'm eating.
Yeah.
Right? We work on it for sure because we don't want the resource guarding, but I don't need my dog to tolerate my hand in their food bowl. It serves me no purpose. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So once you start to understand these things and like, when you say unprovoked, right? I look at, you mentioned dog size. So I'm already like flagging small dog, right? You mentioned barriers. I'm like, all right, cool, we know that. I also look at energy. So a lot of times the other dog might be friendly, exuberantly friendly, and the human just sees friendly. The dog goes unstable energy,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
that'll cause reactivity.
Yes.
You know, but the human doesn't see that as bad. So therefore it looks unprovoked.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So once you start to see the world as a dog sees the world, you go, oh, like this makes sense in my dog's eyes.
Yeah.
May not make sense to us,
Right.
but once you understand how dogs think,
Yeah. We've definitely noticed that with, like if a super excited up in her face dog is like up friendly, she's kind of, you can see her kind of scrunch up and is like, whoa. And when that's happening, I'm saying, lady, like,
Yes.
I don't, not that that's helpful, but I'm like,
so
better not.
talking actually can create a problem
Sure, yeah,
because it's energy,
yeah,
right? Have you ever like you approach lady like she's on the couch or something, and you might baby talk to her? You
Oh,
might
she hates that.
Oh, does she hate it?
Yeah, we leave her alone. I mean, she's never growled at us,
Uh-huh.
anything, but like she likes her space.
Sure.
If we go and she's laying on, she has a chair.
Mhm.
We go pet her on the chair, or if she is on the couch and we go sit next to her on the couch.
I
she's
see what you're
off
saying.
on the
Yeah,
floor.
yeah, yeah.
Like she just,
Yeah.
she likes to be pet. She'll roll over on
Aloof.
the ground,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
on the couch she's like, I don't want to sit by you.
The most aloof dog.
Yeah, very aloof. It's
So-
just does her own thing.
Like if my pit Lexi, for example, is on the couch,
Mm-hmm.
if I were to just baby talk to her, you'd see the tail start wagging,
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff, right? Because of the sound.
Yeah,
So whenever we're working with dogs, we're always fairly quiet. I don't teach no. The reason why we don't say no is because it becomes a cute behavior.
yeah,
So technically speaking, lady becomes reactive. You say no. You correct in the e-collar. She thinks that no caused the correction,
yeah,
not her behavior.
yeah,
It's the tiniest little detail. But this is what holds back a lot of trainers because almost everybody uses no. So now the dog goes, I can be reactive until I hear no. But what we want is lady to just think, I'm not going to bark at that dog.
yeah,
You see that difference there?
Yeah.
Because for a human, you can say, don't yell at people. And the human goes, oh, okay. You don't yell at people. right? It's rude or whatever. Dogs don't do that. She just goes, oh, you're telling me no for this dog. But what about the next dog? Okay, so the only time we ever use cues is for cued behavior. Sit, stay, down, come, place, heel, break. Okay, almost always we don't say no or anything to correct unwanted behaviors because I want the dog to learn the behavior itself.
Right.
To not do it by default. And then the dog will start opting for better decisions. Okay, it's like little things that we change that we don't do like most other trainers that distinguish the training the most.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions so far?
It's gonna take it all.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'd be 2 on heel. The third class is the variable, depending on how the reactivity stuff goes, right? If it's like you're walking, you're like, Jesse, we've not had any reactivity in the 2 weeks, and you're concerned about that, right? Because people are like, if we can't see it, how do we know that we're actually making progress with it? I usually ask, like, well, did you see any triggers? You know, like some of my clients' dogs have like a neighborhood nemesis, right, or nemesi, and whenever the dog sees it, they're at it, and they're like, Jesse, I can't believe it, I saw my nemesis, and like, my dog didn't care.
Yeah.
And my neighbor's dog was being an asshole. Like, I feel so good, you know? And I'm like, good. Obviously, there's clear progress there, right? But if we don't see that, then that's where we do controlled context to see if we can force it, okay?
Yeah.
Once you understand how reactivity works and how to shut it down, and then understand the expectation of stop and then deter, it's really just you live your life applying these things, and then over time, you're just kind of weeding it out.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a perfect dog. It doesn't mean your dog will never be reactive again. But I get clients that can't go on a walk with their dog because the dog is super reactive.
Yeah.
Like they'll run out, pee and poop, and then just back inside again.
Right.
Right? They're like, they went from that to going on long, hour-long walks
Right.
with no reactivity.
Yeah.
You know, and then maybe 6 months later, they get a moment, they correct the dog stops, they continue on with life. Right? That's much better than my dog was reactive so badly that I couldn't even go for a walk. Okay? Because there's no such thing as perfect human, no such thing as perfect dog. Now, if a client is telling me that their dog has reactivity at least once a week, that tells me they're not doing something correctly. So I usually have to fish for answers, okay? Because people already have a natural aversion to the collar. They also don't want to ruin their dog. They also don't want to ruin the relationship with the dog. These are all common things that I come across, right? And I'll tell them, like, they're like, but this is so much better. It's just once a week. And I'm like, I'm trying to get you to 0.
Yeah.
Because I know if I settle for once a week with my client, at some point it becomes once a week, to 2 times a week, to 5 times a week, to once a day, to 10 times. It's just going to regress backwards, right? So we always push for 110% because I know the dog, we're not going to get it. We're not going to get it with the human. But if I push for more, I'm closer to 100 than if I shot for like 80%.
Yeah.
Okay, because complacency is a big thing with people too. They're like, oh, my dog was doing so great. I didn't think I needed to like correct them anymore. I'm like, no, it's like with humans. We have cops for a reason. We have judges for a reason. We have jails for a reason, right? And people know better, right? Dogs at no point will ever learn to know better.
Yeah.
That's a human concept. Your dog has a learning capacity of a 2 to 3-year-old child, forever. Okay, she's never going to mature, become an 18-year-old, mentally get a job, help support the family. She is forever 2 to 3 years old, and 2 to 3-year-olds forever need to be told what to do when they're 2 to 3 to 5 to 8, right? But humans grow up, we mature, we become adults, and at some point are able to become self-dependent. But there are also people out there, Down syndrome or some kind of I don't know what the term for it is. It was retardation when I was growing up, right? They don't ever really get to that point. Right? They need help, right? And that's not anything on them. That's just mentally where they're limited at. But for the dog, 2 to 3 years old. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Question on any of that. Is there anything else you need her to do, obedience-wise?
No, we never expect her to. I don't need her to be a Belgian Mountain. That is like up, down, sit, stay. Like we just want her to be happy and not try to rip a dog's head off and listen to us. Yeah, recall, heel. Heel would be nice. Heel. She doesn't pull unless when she's lunging. She just like
Weaves.
yeah, like I will trip over her because she's not by my side. So yeah, the barking.
The inside barking.
The inside barking.
Okay.
Yeah. People at the park don't even know that she barks because she's like quiet. But you should hear her inside. And then I know, what's your wife's name again? Sorry.
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. We were talking about how, like, if someone gives her a treat at the park or something, which we shouldn't be doing anyway, I say, like, sure, as long as there's no dogs around. Well, sure enough, like, a dog will come running, and she just kind of, like, does that.
Yeah.
But then when I'm at home with my brother and his German Shepherd, too, and they're, like, near each other, and I want to give them both a treat, can't do that either. And we would like to be able to. It's same with my mom's golden doodle. Like, I would like to have them be able to be around each other and give them treats. So I don't know if that's too tall of an ask, but
It's not necessarily tall. It's just, is the reward worth the risk?
sure, yeah, I get that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
more like we can manage that instead of, like, we can avoid that instead of, like, just, like, doing it.
Sorry, I think this is we got a friend doing some work for us. Yeah, so is the risk worth the reward?
Right.
So can it be done? 100%. Like we do with our dogs. We have 3 dogs.
Yeah.
I used to have 5 dogs at one point.
Oh,
Can I show you how to do it, like with the German Shepherd
Yeah.
and the Golden Doodle?
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
yeah.
Okay. But let's say we're doing that, like we have a controlled context, right? And she decides to be territorial or resource guard. We can use the collar to stop that, but the proximity is so close.
Yeah.
Is unless like you're holding the leash and you're doing all these things, the risk of altercation or an actual bite is pretty great.
Yeah.
So then if you really want it, what I would most likely do is first muzzle condition, so that when we're doing this exercise, she would be muzzled proactively, so we can do these exercises of being able to give treats to her and the other dog. If she did something, she can attempt to, but with that muzzle on, she can't get a full-on
Yeah.
bite. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Otherwise, because if you're trying to do it without the muzzle, you're increasing the risk of an actual bite there.
So we did, I'm like nervous to even tell you this. When we were at Charlotte's, we had both of them on a leash, sitting like near each other. And we give Fasa a treat, and Lady would go like that, and we'd say, no, but give him the treat. We were using the clicker too. We were buzzing her when, I think we were doing it when she would do that.
He's upstairs.
So then when finally, like a couple treats later, the last one she like kind of like bared her teeth a little bit. She didn't get a treat, but like when she finally just looked at him and like looked at me like, okay, where's mine? I was like, good, you didn't do anything, so you get one.
Sure.
Is that horrible? I don't know. It was kind of working.
I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't call it horrible. I just look at it and go like, the potential for something happening is great.
Right. Yeah.
And then once it's happened, like there's no going back.
Yeah.
Like, we get clients' dogs who they live together,
Yeah.
and there's a catalyst for a dog fight, usually
Right.
food.
Yeah.
And then people don't know how to stop dog fights correctly, so usually it's just pulling them away. So then they're going at it,
Yeah.
and then they throw them in rooms. And then 30 minutes later, they'll bring them back out again, and then right back at it again.
Yeah.
Because it's what we call unresolved tension.
Yeah.
I've come into homes where one dog has killed another dog, over either a resource, the other dog getting in the owner's space, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's usually when I get called in. I'm like, oh, should call me sooner.
Yeah.
Because there's usually signs of it.
Right.
Like that's already for me a sign. Because
Yeah.
she's clearly displaying like,
Right.
I don't like this proximity
Yeah.
of this dog being that close when there's a resource around.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's why I suggest like if it's really something you want to work on, I'd say you want a muzzle condition right away, right? Because then if something happened,
Yeah.
we can correct her still.
Yeah.
We're not worried about an actual
Right.
puncture or anything like that. But
Yeah.
do keep in mind if the other dog decided to become defensive to protect itself.
Yes. Right.
Now she's at a
Now
disadvantage.
she's- yeah.
So that's
Right.
where things get a little wonky.
Sure.
But we've done it.
Yeah. It's not like top of my list, but I was just wondering if.
Yeah, I would.
Because otherwise, like when we feed her and the shepherd, like it's obviously separate. Like he's in a room, she's eating in the kitchen, and like we obviously separate and just like manage it. But yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And it's again like me as a trainer, I'm capable of doing a lot of stuff. Like one of the first dogs that I helped rehab for a rescue, her name is Frankie, was very ball driven, therefore ball aggressive with other dogs. And I have a video of her playing with my dogs, and I had 3, Zena, who's in there, and then Lexi and Poncho, who you just heard of earlier, and she's playing fetch with them. And there's a point where like my pit grabs the ball, and she just pulls away, whereas before she'd go after the dog. And I remember when I posted it, like the rescue was like, oh my God, like she's fixed, like that's amazing, this and that. I'm like, she's not fixed. She will do it with my dogs, and she'll do it with me. But I would not teach anybody who adopts this dog that they could do it too. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
She ended up going to a really good family, really good owners who were very diligent about following through with the training and stuff. And actually with their family dogs, they got her to the same point. But she's like, I would never do this with this dog, like with a random dog, you know? And it took them a lot of work before they got to the point where they're like they were trusting enough of her to like experiment. Whereas most people, they just see that and then they try to do it immediately on their own, and then they're surprised when things go south.
Right.
Like when I work with dogs that are dog aggressive and we socialize them, and they're doing very well, and then the owner will sit down, the dog will lay at their feet, the other dog will come approach, this dog will then go to attack.
Yeah.
And the owner's like, well, I can't believe it, they were just playing. I'm like, yeah, that's a completely different context.
Right.
First is laying at your feet. The dog was guarding you. But they would, like, I would foresee that, and I know that.
Right.
So that's why I tell people that, like, even though this is looking good, if this happens and the dog approaches, expect it to go south. So you want to be proactive about not allowing the other dog to come into your space while your dog is resting here, and or get this dog or your dog to move, leave the space, so that there's nothing to protect.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there's stuff like that I teach. That's just dog behavior and understanding. I'm more than happy to aim for 110%. There's just things that I would say you're going to want to have, like that muzzle, for example, that alleviate the anxiety of what happens if something happens.
Yeah.
Okay? Question on that?
I don't think so.
So I'm trying to figure out how many classes to recommend to you. It's definitely, at minimum, at least 3.
Sure.
Okay? So we have 3, 6, 9, and 12-week programs. 3 is for leash reactivity, because there's 2 classes on heel, which leaves a class for the reactivity if the owner's still struggling. Otherwise, if everything's looking good and the owner is happy, and you have that 3rd class, I'll happy to cover something I can teach within the class. Okay. 6 classes would be like leash reactivity, typically recall, or stationary control, which is like go to your bed, don't move for the next 2 hours or whatever.
I like can't even imagine her being able to do that. Like, it'll be awesome if she can, but I love you, lady. It's up here. I just don't know if she's like can do that.
Oh yeah, any dog can do it.
Yeah.
We do it all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, there's not a dog in my career that I've not been able to train as long as the owner follows the instructions.
Okay.
When people don't get progress, it's because they don't do the homework.
Yeah.
Almost always, it's they're uncomfortable with increasing the level of the collar. Okay.
We're fine with that.
I think 9 and 12 would be overkill, so you would be at a minimum 3 or 6.
Okay.
2 classes on heel for sure, a class potentially on reactivity. And that's really the greatest definer of how the program's going to progress, right? So if you do the 2 and then the 3 on reactivity or whatever, and you're like, wow, like it's working, like we're making progress, like we're seeing it less and less, I'm like, great, like, we'll work on stationary control or whatever. If for whatever reason she's like Georgia, and you're like, hey Jesse, like we had a moment, like it was pretty bad, like we're gonna stop her now, but the first thing I'm gonna ask is how high did you go? And you might say we got at 90 because we ran out of time. I'm like, okay, we have 37 more levels. And I was like, would you like to create a controlled context? And we're sure as hell not gonna start below 90 because you already went as high as 90.
Right.
We're gonna try to find and close that gap to see what's actually gonna work, right?
Yeah.
And then go off, rinse and repeat. And then once we feel confident, then I go, okay, now we can progress to something else.
Yeah.
Okay. Once you understand how to correct behavior, it's pretty straightforward. So like, if a dog tried to mount her, she would bite him. If a dog was barking in her face, she would bite him. If a dog is playing too rough, she would bite him. Right? It's one action of discipline for a multitude of behaviors.
Right.
So once you understand how to correct dog behavior, it's really just like one correction for a multitude of things.
Right.
And it's just how severe does the correction have to be in order for her to go, I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
Okay. So then stationary control. So stationary control is nice if you want to go to like a restaurant with her or whatever, and just have her sit still. We don't have so if you look up on the camera here, on the top right, you'll see like dog beds there.
Yeah.
Those little gray things, right? Those are called placemats.
Yeah.
So as a part of our daycare, dogs do hourly rotations, an hour of play if they're social, an hour in the eyes of pen if they're antisocial, hour of duration work if we've trained them or they know duration, hour of treadmill time, and then they go back to their kennel for an hour to decompress, and then it's repeat. Okay, we really only do one treadmill session a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine.
The only dogs that don't do treadmill are like the super old dogs,
Okay.
and or we get some dogs. You can put them in the pen; they'll poop 5 times. You put them on the treadmill; they'll force it out, and the poop ruins treadmills.
Yeah.
So, but we have a few dogs that are treadmill banned because of that. Otherwise, it's on the hour every hour. Something's happening. Okay. So stationary work. If she came here either for boarding or whatever, would open her up to another activity here, and it's nice because they're doing stationary work. There's dogs on treadmills, there's dogs playing, there's dogs being trained on the floor, and they're required to do nothing. Okay, so it's the dog learning that they don't have to be doing something while things are busy in the environment, like calm while it's crazy, if you will. Okay, that takes a class. Her recall, I know you guys said her recall is pretty good.
It's not quick, but she gets back to us.
Okay, so I would probably suggest reviewing recall.
Yeah.
There are some dogs that just move slow, but I'll tell my owners, like, if you've seen your dog move quick during play or other things, then your dog can move quick for recall. Okay.
Yeah.
If a dog is slow, like they're like just slow for everything, and it's rare, but I'll get that, and I'll tell the owner that like that's your just dog is just slow. Most 99.9% of dogs have the ability to move quick, they just choose not to.
Yes.
Okay, so I would, and that just takes a class.
Yeah.
So we have 2 on heel, 1 potential recall, 1 on stationary control, 1 on 2 on heel, reactivity, stationary control, recall, which leaves the 6th class as a variable. Okay, so let's say we cover all those things, you're feeling really good. We could learn, down or whatever. Or if like reactivity, if we needed another one for whatever reason, we have that class for that. I've even had clients pocket them, and they're like, I want to just do this for a year, 6 months, whatever, see how it works. I've had other clients, they're like, Jesse, everything is great. I have this class, I don't think I'm ever going to use it. What can I do with it? And then we convert it to credit, and then they just use it towards like a boarding stay or whatever. Okay, so I don't have a problem with that either. Questions on any of that stuff?
I think so. We did, this is, I feel like still left over from our training from a year ago. We did behavioral downs with her.
Oh, the settles, whatever.
Yeah, and she just does pretty well. Just chills. We would do it a lot when people would come over.
So actually, sorry, the 6th class, we can cover like the indoor barking and everything?
Yes,
I forgot
that would
about
be
that, yeah.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a huge.
When guests come over, how is she?
Depends on who.
Okay.
My friends,
She's a girl's girl.
She's a girl's girl for sure. Gets excited, and she doesn't do it anymore, but she used to like peak because she got so excited that
Sure,
she would see them. But she's thankfully doesn't do that anymore. Older met, like we had workers, we have a roof issue right now, and we had workers come over this morning, and we leashed her for that because I knew she would be. She growled at them, but like tail between her legs and kind of ran away. She's definitely more skittish with men.
Okay.
But like she likes my brother now. She likes a couple of the guys at the dog park that she knows, but never like older guys.
Okay. So like people coming over is its own exercise.
Yeah.
So that could technically be class 6. If you're wanting help with her acclimating to males faster and like that skittishness, then that starts to push you more into the 9-ish realm. Okay.
Yeah.
The classes do get cheaper per class because it's longer. And then, remember, like if we got to class 7 or 8, then it's like we got everything accomplished, and then time passes, you're like, hey, we're really good with what we have. We can always convert it to credit.
Cool.
And then use it. Like I have a client that his dog did a 4-week program, but she's human aggressive, and she does well here, but we've had a few instances of her. And I was like, yeah, we need to work on that.
Yeah.
So he bought more classes just to get the cheaper per class rate because he boards her here regularly.
Yeah.
So then he's like, it's a win-win for me then in case she ends up leading the classes, and if we end up not using them all, he can just convert them. So.
Yeah, because we're definitely interested in doing daycare, like daycare boarding as well.
Okay.
If that's-
Yeah, so just as for FYI for you guys, dogs that have trained with us are not required to do daycare.
Okay.
Okay, I get dogs.
We still are, what?
Yeah, you're more than
okay.
welcome to, but just so you know. So dogs that have not trained with us are required to come at least once a week. Okay?
Gotcha, yeah.
Because in the past I was more lenient on that, and we would get dogs that would destroy things. So the dogs that we've trained almost all the time, like never have an issue with them. It's the dogs that we haven't trained. So them coming once a week keeps them in our routine and our structure.
Yeah.
We get clients that come from like St. Charles, Indiana, Skokie, whatever. I don't expect them to come once a week
Yeah.
in order to do boarding. But because they've trained with us, they can come whenever. And
Yeah.
because everybody's on the same page, we reinforce the training. So if she did become reactive here, it would be corrected. All that stuff, anything that she's taught, obedience-wise, like I said, stationary control is applied here. So the clients like it because it keeps the dog in that structured routine.
Yeah.
So when they pick them up, there's no like regression or anything. Okay.
Gotcha.
But yeah, if you want to learn more about that, you can text or email Tina, and then she'll probably put you in contact with our admins here. Because
Okay.
Tina actually lives in Texas.
Okay.
She's my mom. She works from home.
Nice.
Yeah,
Love
and then
that.
Maria's my aunt, and Elizabeth is my wife, and they're the admins here for the facility. So Tina does my personal schedule, and then Elizabeth and Maria do the facility schedule.
Okay.
So we would just need a new fecal, vaccination records,
Yeah. I
and
actually
then
brought 'em.
okay.
I didn't know if they got 'em or not.
Yeah, no, you're fine for here, but definitely make a ginger profile, all that stuff, and then we do a 3-day evaluation.
Okay.
You can do once a week or whatever. There's no specific way you have to do it, but we slowly ease the dog into the daycare.
Yeah, awesome.
The first day is getting them acclimated with my staff in the space. There's no socialization. The second day, we start to bring her around certain personalities and them around her, see if there's any tension, if everything's looking good. By the third day, we try to do one-off pairings
Yeah.
in an actual pen setting, and we
Very
start
good.
small. And then we usually don't do more than like 8, maybe 12-ish dogs
Perfect.
when we do groups.
Yeah.
Most places like 30 dogs to one person. For us, it's 8 to 12. And if we have a dog like we have that Roddy Jojo, she needs like 2 to 3 dogs. That's it. Anything more would be too much for her.
Yeah.
That'd be asking for an incident there. So,
Cool.
okay. Anything else?
I don't think so.
When will we be able to do those? Just 3, you said there's 3 days of acclimation.
When?
Yeah.
You can, when you email the info, they can get you set up. You can start that before your training.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it after your training. The training just allows you to skip daycare when you don't want to bring the dog or whatever. So, okay. But she's welcome to start whenever.
Okay. Awesome.
So yeah, I would recommend at minimum 6,
Yeah.
9 if you just want the extra time to work on like the nervous skittishness and all that stuff with socialization. And I highly recommend that you upgrade your collar. I've had clients in the past try to stick with what they have, and we use 2 to 3 classes. And it's not working, so they essentially just wasted
Right.
2 to 3 classes. And one class is almost the same cost as the collar itself. So
What is
okay.
the brand again? that you-
It's Dr. DOGTRA, Black Edition, and then Tina will send you the information. Just make sure that if you do not get it from Chewy, and if you get it from Amazon, double check that it says Black Edition, because we've had people buy it from Chewy and Amazon, and they get sent the wrong collar. Okay, so the box will literally say Black Edition. Okay. Anything else?
I have one more. Something about daycare or something about training. I forget. I don't know. If I think of it.
You can always email if
Yeah, okay.
you remember. Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure meeting you guys.
So nice to meet you. Thank you.
If you have any other questions that you may have forgotten to ask, feel
Yeah.
free to ping Tina. If they
Okay.
pertain to me, she'll email me.